Have you had trouble understanding what a negative number is? How can you get to a number below zero? How can you add two numbers and end up with something that's less than zero? Um, well, sometimes it's useful to think of numbers not with zero as the end point, but as much space below zero as there is above zero. So, say for example, if we use the, the, the idea of loaning money, so if you borrow money, if you went to your sister and you borrowed $2 because you wanted to buy something and you had no money. So after you borrowed the money from her, and you've bought whatever you wanted to buy, you now have $0 and the amount that you owe. So your total situation is not just zero, but it's -2. It's less than zero by $2 because you have borrowed two. You need to pay her back two. That's if you have to pay her back. Another helpful idea is if you have a garden, and this is the flat soil, the 0 point. If you take a shovel and you dig a hole, you go below the 0 point, below the flat earth. And the more you dig, the deeper the hole gets, the bigger the value of the hole. Okay? So say you took one shovel out, say that's equivalent to one shovelful of earth. Take another shovelful of earth or soil, that's 2 shovelfuls deep, 3 shovelfuls deep. On the other hand, if you've put some of the soil on top of a flat surface on the ground, you now have a little bit of a mound, a hill. And so that is above the ground level, above the 0 point. So above here you have a hill, and below zero you have a hole. Maybe that's an easier way to think about it. Let's use an example. On this scale, whenever you are adding numbers, you are moving up. When you are minusing numbers or adding negative numbers, it's the same thing. You minus a number. If you minus 2, it's the same as adding -2. Okay, say you're doing 2 plus 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. Everyone knows that. It's a very simple example. You start off with 2. You already have 2. 2 above the 0 point, right? When you add 2, you move up by 2. 2 plus another 2. 1, 2. You end up at 4. So 2 plus another 2, you end up at 4. What about if we used another example, but an example that would land us somewhere down here under the 0 point? What if you had 2? You started off with 2, but now you're minusing 4. 2 minus 4. Again, you might be thinking, how can we take 4 away from 2? It's not possible. 4 is bigger than 2. Well, you can if you think of numbers as on the scale, where there is as much space above the 0 as there is below the 0. So let's try that example. So what we're doing now is 2 minus 4 equals, where do we end up? Start at 2, minus is now moving down. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where you end up, at -2. We'll do that again. You start off at 2, and you minus 4, minus 4. So minus 1, minus 2, minus 3, minus 4. You end up with negative 2. So the answer is actually minus 2. Think about this in practical terms. Let's go back to you borrowing money from your sister. Say you wanted to buy something worth $4, but you only have $2. So you have $2, that's your starting point, but you need to pay $4 for the thing that you want. In order to get that, you need to borrow money from your sister. And how much? $2. It's how much you need to borrow. You will owe her $2 afterwards. Or if we use the example of the soil and we're digging a hole, you start off with a little hill with 2 scoops, right? It's a little hill on top of the ground. Take your shovel, dig 1 scoop out. Now it's a smaller hill. Another scoop. Now it's completely flat. You've got 2 more scoops to go. Now you're going into the soil, creating a small hole. 1. And then the last one, the 4th scoop, you dig again. Now the end result is you have a hole in the ground with 2 scoops deep. So you started with a mound or a little hill with 2 scoops, and after 4, you drop down to 2 scoops deep hole, a hole with 2 scoops deep. I hope that helps. Okay, now if we go to some other simple examples, just to help your mind get used to the idea. Say we start off with 5 minus 10 equals what? So you start off with 5, and minus 10 means you're going down. Taking away, you're reducing the value. 5, go down 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You end up at negative 5. Want to go over that example again? You start off at 5. That's where you start. 5. Then you minus 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. You ended up at minus 5. Okay. Now there's a way to test whether your answer is correct. And there is a rule with equations. So equations is anything you've added, subtracted, multiplied, and it equals something else. Okay? That's a mathematical statement. So with an equation where you have the 0, whatever you do to this side, if you do the same thing to the other side, the equation holds true. So the equation is still the same. So if you add 4 to this side, and you add 4 to this side, the equation is still true. If it was true to begin with, it'll be true after you've done the same thing on both sides. So what's the value of testing it? Well, if you do something to this side, and you do the same thing to the other side, you can see whether it comes to the exact same number. So then you can find out whether this is really correct without having to go through this. Now, if over here we have minus 5. Okay, say we added 10 to both sides. Five 5 minus 10 plus 10 equals minus 5 plus 10. So here we've added 10 on both sides. If you minus 10 and then you plus 10, that part is equal to 0. That part, minus 10 plus 10. Same thing if you minus 100 plus 100. It's equal to 0. Right? So minus 10 plus 10 is equal to 0. It's plus 0. So 5 plus 0 is 5. So on this side, you end up with 5. And on the other side, you have minus 5 plus 10. To make things easier, you can just move these two around, and you can do that if it's plus or minus. So we'll just switch these two around. So this is plus 10, so we write 10, because once you know it's plus, you can just write 10. Okay? 5, and this minus 5, 10, sorry, and the minus 5 you put on the other side. So all we've done, you've taken the minus 5 there and the 10 over here. Now 5 we are on this side, 10 minus 5. Now that should be fairly easy because you're not ending up with a negative number. It's maybe a little easier to think of. 10 minus 5, you're left at 5. Right, 5 equals 5. This is just to prove that the equation is true, is correct. So that answer, minus 5, is correct. So whenever you want to do a quick test, just to make sure that the answer you get is really correct, it's a double check, you can do something like this. Add something on that side, the same thing on the other side, until you get to this sort of a situation. If you don't get a similar value on both sides, it means there's something wrong with your answer. That's if what you've done here is correct.